Good day there viewers, my name is Cliff and welcome to my channel called Vintage Time. In today's episode of How to Cut Gemstones, I'll be featuring Zircon that comes from Mud Tanks, Northern Territory, Australia. Zircon should not be confused with cubic zirconia, as zircon is a natural gem while cubic zirconia is a man-made gem. Zircon has quite a high refractive index from 1.93 to 1.98. On the Mohs hardness scale, it has a hardness of approximately 7.5 out of 10. In fact, this nice little preform of zircon on the right comes from the larger piece of zircon on the left, which was heavily veiled and included. And here on the left, this piece of zircon is less included and is a nice light pink colour, and this piece here later on should yield a larger gem. So the type of design I'll be faceting today will be called the squilliant, which is designed by Marco Voltolini, and it's a square design of the round brilliant. So if you're new to my channel, this is very typical. Before we start faceting, I glue the gem to the brass dot, which is placed in a transfer jig overnight, and then the following day the dot comes out of the transfer jig and it's placed into my faceting machine, and then I'm ready to start faceting. So before I start, I'd like to say a huge thank you to all my subscribers for taking the time to watch my content and leaving comments and supporting my channel. However, out of all the thousands of my subscribers, there is a small handful that need to leave inappropriate comments about the music or the film production. And I'd just like to say I'm a small YouTube creator. I don't have a huge film set like this, nor do I have the budget to run a crew like this because I'm a small operation, so I just use one producer and one director. So due to my small production budget, I only have my assistant Jaws, who does all the direction, production, planning and research to make this channel happen. One of the gripes some people absolutely go ape over is that they don't like the background music. So to appease those people, I've booked in Eric Clapton for a 10-second cameo because I can't afford much more. He charges $500 a minute. So Eric, come on down. So thank you to Eric, as he has just left the building. I would have loved that he would have had some backing vocals from Taylor Swift or Katy Perry. However, I simply just didn't have the funds. So repeat offenders or smart aleck comments or trolling or absolutely going ape in the comments, your comments will be disabled by Jaws. As for all my wonderful subscribers and for those people who are interested in learning how to cut gemstones, please leave comments. I do try to get back. If I forget, just remind me. So let's get on to gem cutting. So the project begins by using a 1200 grit disc. I'm not using a very heavy disc as the size of the gem is not that large, and I'm only faceting small facets on the pavilion, rotating through the index wheel as you can see there, and I'm using 64 wheel and I'm rotating at every 4 indexes, so that will be 64, 4, 8, 12, 16, etc. And I'll be faceting 16 facets to start the first set. So I've cut 16 facets at 42.90 degrees using a 1200 grit diamond disc, and then I will follow up by using a 3000 grit diamond disc, and in this footage you can see that I've gone over the first rough out and just smooth things out with the 3000 grit disc. Now that the first set of 16 pavilion facets have been completed, I'm now set to facet the girdle outline. So I've set the faceting arm at 90 degrees and I need to cut 8 girdle facets. So it'll be 4 side facets and 4 corner facets. In this piece of footage you can see the basic outline of the girdle. This will be followed through by cutting some corner facets, and then I'll cut the second set of pavilion facets. The girdle outline is now fully complete, and I've also faceted the second set of pavilion facets on each side. Now with these little facets, you probably would want to use a very fine 3000 pre-polished disc because you do not want to overcut. All the pavilion facets have now been completed, and I finished it up to a pre-polish of 3000 grit, and really is technically I guess around 8000, but I'm using a very worn disc, so that's bringing it up to a really good pre-polish in my opinion. In terms of the final polish, what I'm doing now, I'm using my Perspex disc and I'm rubbing in a little bit of 1.5 micron diamond paste. And I'm only going to do what we call commercial polish. I'm not doing a competition cut, so this particular gem I'm actually faceting now will be set in a ring for my wife, so I don't need to go to any great lengths to overdo things, because in point of fact I actually find sometimes commercial grade polishing is no different than a 50,000. Sometimes it's almost impossible to tell the difference. However, having said that, I believe that Zircon and Topaz are the easiest of all the gems to do a final polish on. And here you can see that I'm looking under my loupe to see whether the facet is polished correctly. And now you can see that the entire facet has been properly polished. In my opinion, 1.5 micron paste does a really good job on Zircon and Topaz. And I think it's come up to a really high polish. In the following scenes you'll see all the various stages of the girdle facets and the pavilion facets being polished. So the next step is to facet the crown, and we're doing the second transfer. As you can see here, I'm holding the transfer jig. I've removed the original dot by heat by using a small handheld blowtorch, and then I'll mount this dot into the faceting machine and start faceting the crown. While I'm setting up to facet the crown, I thought I would take the opportunity to say that Zircon, in my opinion, is one of the most undervalued gems around. In Australia, in jewellery shops, it's rarely seen as a set stone in jewellery, and it's really odd because it has such a high refractive index rate that it would compensate for a sapphire or a diamond, and the colour range is quite phenomenal. Also, Zircon, to buy the rough material, it's a lot cheaper than sapphire, and from a faceting point of view it's a lot easier to facet and polish. If you're looking into buying faceted gems like Zircon and Topaz, I recommend that you look into buying both, because both gems are both underrated and both undervalued. And because these gems are mined heavily, eventually there will be finite reserves, more so in Zircon than Topaz, but eventually Topaz will be the same as Zircon as it gets mined more, but it's just going to be less good quality Topaz. In this scene here, I've cut the first step of the crown using a 3000 grit diamond disc, because there's not a lot of depth in the crown and I don't want to overcut, and the key is to cut a nice even girdle line. You would think that the crown would be a lot easier to facet than the pavilion due to less facets and less facets to polish, but from my experience I've found the crown more difficult, as you need to get that perfect girdle line, and also getting the table to meet up with the facets below it can also be a challenge in itself. As I'm panning down here, ready to cut the second step of the crown, I have my faceting arm set on the protractor at 15 degrees. When you're faceting at such low angles, I always make sure that I have my faceting arm set on the trailing edge of the disc as I'm about to cut. I don't want to be dragging that faceting arm too close to the center, because if you do at such low angles, if you get it wrong, you can literally dig the gem into the disc. So my intention is just to do very short sweeps from side to side, and because the facets aren't huge, I won't be pressing in too hard either. So the two steps of the crown have been completed, only using a 3000 grit diamond disc. The next step will be to facet the table, and then we do the final polish. So I'm ready to polish the crown, and I'm using the same compound and the same type of disc as when I polish a pavilion. This also means that we're getting closer to the end of this video. So on behalf of myself and yours, we would both like to thank all our subscribers. Please do leave comments, because a lot of people sincerely want to learn how to facet gemstones, and I'm quite happy to leave some advice. As for the very small handful that just like to be obnoxious and troll, Jaws is on standby, and she's willing and able to hit that mute button. So it's over and out from Jaws and myself. So until next time, please take care. Don't forget to watch the final reveal. See you later, everybody. Bye.